Okay. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا الله بعلمه وعلمكم آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. He says شروطه أي شروط الوضوء وتقدم بيانها في بابه وتعبيري بما ذكر أعم ما عبر به. Okay, so it says the same conditions basically. It says ولكن يصح غسل or غسل نحو حائض والنفساء لنحو إحرام بنسك من حج أو عمرة كدخول مكة، لأن المقصود منه دفع الراحة الكريهة للاجتماع. Okay, so there's basically two types of ritual ghusl. There is a ritual ghusl you do for certain occasions, and there's a ritual ghusl that actually changes your states, right? So the question is, are they both actual ritual ghusls? And the answer is yes. So we don't have a ritual wudu that makes you nice and clean. That's not a thing. Like you either make wudu or you don't, right? Um, that's not really yeah, I guess it is the kind of case, yeah. But basically with ghusl we do. So we have a ghusl that doesn't do anything to your state, but is still a ritual. Okay. So those are the things like your a woman on her period, or she's in Lokia and she wants to do she wants to enter ihram, so she's going to go make ghusl, or she's going to enter Mecca, or the likes. I think that actually counts as wudu. That makes sense. Right, let's say somebody who is in janaba and they want to go to sleep and they make wudu. I think they actually have wudu, but they don't have ghusl. So I think they actually did something, if that makes sense. Even though what it achieved is zero, it did actually do something, as opposed to she's not really lifting her state at all. Tajdeed, yeah, tajdeed wudu, yeah, good. Tajdeed wudu is a ritual, but doesn't do anything. Yeah, that's true. Um, So it says, because what's the point of these things is minhu dafa raha, ra'iha al-kariha. You're trying to basically mean you're going to be around other people. You want to smell nice. That's the whole point. So we mentioned this last week or whatever it was, is that you're going to work and you're having a shower in the morning. You know, why are you having a shower? Oh, because I want to smell nice. So that's an act of worship in itself, in general. Like you want to smell nice, you want to don't want to be dirty, whatever. But then you can actually make the intention that I'm actually doing a ghusl because I'm going to be in a place where there's other people. So now it's now a ritual. You've changed it from a general ibadah to now a ritual. Right? Um, what, just don't tell your Salafi friend because they said that's a bid'ah to make ghusl for go to work. But we say no, it's not. That's it. So we would say there's an analogy there, right? The illah is al-ijtima' whenever there's groups of people, right? So just a side point, I mentioned this before in other classes that the Salafi mentality that this is a bid'ah, therefore it doesn't count. What is 100% true, just applied in the wrong way, right? So could you do an act of worship that is غير مأمور به? Like, could you do an act of worship that Allah has not commanded you to do? Could you volunteer an act of worship? The answer is no. You can only worship Allah in the way that Allah has told you to, right? The issue is that a bid'ah hasana is just a surah jadida, right? It's just a new example of, or a juz'i jadid, a new particular of a whole universal, right? So somebody says, prove to me that it's sunnah to say La ilaha illallah 1002 times on a Tuesday night. And you say, well, it's dhikr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, dhikr is mashru'. And saying La ilaha illallah 1002 times on a Tuesday night is an example of dhikr. So therefore it's mashru'. And so they're going to come along and say, no, that's a bid'ah. And we say it's not bid'ah. It's mashru' min haythu huwa. You know, it doesn't matter what you do. It's mashru', right? It's called for. It's ma'mur bihi. Exactly, yeah. Okay. Um, so the point they're saying is right. The concept is right. The application is wrong. Why is the application wrong? Because they don't come from a refined tradition. They don't come from a refined tradition. That's why. They come from a non-tradition. So that's just how it is, right? It's like modern art, right? What is modern art? What is beautiful, right? So the concept of beauty is a huge concept in art. And even the nature of art. Do we do art for the sake of art, or do we do art for the sake of something else? So there's a lot of like advanced things in the way you look at many things to do with culture. And there's many non-advanced things, right? So I'm just talking to my son, he's into BMXing, and I'm just saying, like I was at the skate park and like I said, I remember like when I was learning how to skateboard, you didn't have people teaching you how to skateboard. There's no like, oh, this is how you do it, right? Because it's a new art, right? And it's a new thing. So you don't have like, you know, that's like an invalid way of doing something, or there's a I can't even what it is. There's even a trick called a not a no comply. What is it? I can't remember what it's called now. No comply. That's the thing in skateboarding. Any of you skateboard? No? Chicago skate scene at Chicago University, and no comply. What is that? Oh yeah, I see what it is. I could never do it. I can hardly do any of those moves. Dallas is too ugly. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Anyway, so the point is, so the concept of bid'ah is there. You're not from a refined system. That's why you're whack. That's why you're crazy, right? It doesn't make any sense. So Ammar is like, yeah, I'm gonna be like a real, I'm gonna write my essay like down the side of the page, bro. He's just handing in the like everything's like he dropped out of his graduation thesis is written down the side in red ink and missing all the vowels as a kind of like his own expression of how to graduate. Like it's not going to be accepted because you've got to be part of the system. Once you're part of the system and you've proven you're part of the system, you've graduated, you can do whatever you want. Now you can try and suggest new academic or artistic ways of doing things, but you've got to prove that you can do the job. You got to prove that you can do the job, right? So that's the thing, is like tamadhub is a training zone, is not a cage. Okay. Um ويصح غسل كتابية ومجنونة من نحو حيض ونفاس لتحل لمسلم من زوج أو سيد لوطئه، right? أي لوطئه إياها, right? وإن انتفى الإسلام والتمييز للضرورة, right? So here's this woman who is insane, or she's not a Muslim, and you're telling her, before I sleep with you, you have to do a ritual bath. She's like, ritual bath? What does that even mean? And it's like, well, you're going to purify yourself to make it halal for us to have relations. She's like, okay, you're just weird, right? She doesn't believe in what you're saying, or doesn't understand what you're saying, or doesn't have the ability to do it. It counts, right? للضرورة, right? Similarly, a child, right? So it doesn't even mention that, right? So uh, could a child um, make a child who does not have tamyiz, could they make a ghusl? They could, للضرورة, right? So you could just like with a child who doesn't have tamyiz, you can make wudu for them, right? Here's a little 3-year-old. I'm going to do tawaf. I'm going to make wudu for him. That counts for tawaf, not for prayer. So if you don't have tamyiz, you can't pray. It's not possible. Like you can't do a ritual because you're not there, right? But you can be bathed, etc. أوكي دوكي زوج أو سيد لوطئه وإن انتفى الإسلام والتمييز للضرورة. وقد تكلمت على وجوب النية مع زيادة في شرح في شرح الأصل وغيره. Right. Notice as it says تكلم على as opposed to تكلم عن. Right. So today we'd say أتكلم عن ماذا تتكلم? What are you speaking about? Right. He says أتكلم على. I'm speaking on the topic of something as opposed to talking about it. It's interesting. Anyway, so what is this? شرح الأصل وغيره. What's that? What is شرح الأصل وغيره? So he has a commentary on Tanqih al-Lubab. I think it was Murabit. Is he here now? No, he's not here. I think Murabit found it, right? It was printed recently. So basically, he has another book that's like this, and it's a bit broader. And it's called Fath al-Wahhab. So Fath al-Wahhab is his famous commentary on the Manhaj, right? Which is his own ikhtisar of the Minhaj al-Talibin. But he also has Fath al-Wahhab, which is also a commentary on this, on the Asl. Not on Mahamili, but on the Tahrir Tanqih. It's in print, yeah. So وَالشَّرْحُ الْأَصْلِ وَغَيْرِهِ, right? You don't need to get it. Don't worry about it. It's not super important. But the point is he mentions it here. Just like Bushra Kareem, Bushra Kareem, the Ba'ishin is always referring to his asl. He says, وَبَسَطْتُ ذَلَكَ فِي الْأَصْلِ. So he did a big commentary, then a small commentary. Okay, so then he says, وَيَحْرَمُ بِالْجَنَابَةِ. We're going to go to the matan and we're going to come back, inshallah. So he says, ما يمنع الجنب منه يمتنع الجنب من 8 أشياء. Why أشياء and not أشياء?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
So it says ويمتنع الجنب من 8 أشياء. Why is it أشياء? Why is that فتحة and not أشياء? Should be مضاف إليه, like 8 رجال. So why is it من 8 أشياء?
Because the skeleton, it still shows fatha even though it's in the majnun state.
What scale is that? What pattern is that?
إفعال.
أفعال is غير منصرف.
Now I'm doubting myself. I don't know. I have to look. Maybe 1 second.
Okay, you say 8 أبواب. Okay, so
Good point.
أفعال is not غير منصرف. Okay, so here this is a weird exception, and there's a whole debate on what on earth's happening here. So we know that it's غير منصرف. أشياء is غير منصرف. We just don't know why, because there's no reason why it should be like. So if it's on the pattern شيء, شيء on أشياء, like what's the big deal, right? If it's on the pattern أفعال. So there's suggestions that it's on the pattern something else, on the pattern like the Hamza became to the beginning of the word. So then it's on the pattern like it moved from shay to like in Jordanian, I don't know if the whole of Levant, they don't say shay, they ishi. So they say fi ishi. There's something ishi. So they moved the Hamza to the beginning. Now this happens quite a lot where the Hamzas are moved around. So perhaps the Hamzas moved around and it's now on the pattern fa'la, like hamra, right? So the Hamza got moved to the beginning, and then they put it on the pattern fa'la. So it was originally shay'un, and then it becomes ashyun, and then you put it on the pattern fa'la and become ashya. So that means there's Hamza at the end, and the alif are extra like hamra, right? There's different suggestions, right? But the practical upshot is ashya is ghayr munsarif, right? That's the practical upshot. So you were right but wrong. Yeah. So that works with me, but not with your wife, Musa. So with your wife, you're just wrong, right? So I was wrong, right? With me, you can say I was right but wrong. Um, okay. ويمتنع الجنوب. May Allah guide us and give us patience and wisdom, subhanAllah. Inshallah, I get Ammar and Muhammad, inshallah, this Friday, inshallah, Muhammad, inshallah, right? And Ammar this Friday, inshallah. Ya Rab. No, no Ameen's there. Ammar, Muhammad, no plans this Friday. Okay.
I mean,
I mean, thank you. See, Muhammad's tafa'al khair tajidhu, right? SubhanAllah, I remember one of my teachers, he said, Inshallah, I'll see you soon. And I was like, no, you won't. And SubhanAllah, I saw him like in 2 months, you know? So we have to be very, be as ridiculously optimistic as you can, as long as as long as you stay within the realm of aqidah, right? When you start jumping out of the realms of aqidah, that's something else. But otherwise, be ridiculously positive, right? We should be ridiculously positive. May Allah protect us and give us, it's very important. Okay, so it says, وَامْتَنَعُ الْجُنُبُ مِنْ ثَمَانِةِ أَشْيَاءَ قِرَاءَةُ الْقُرْآنِ وَكِتَابَتُهُ. Interesting. They don't usually mention that, right? He says, هذا أحد الوجهين والوجه الثاني الأصح عندهم جواز كتابة القرآن على ورق أي شيء بين يديه بشرط ألا يمس الكتاب ولا يحمله. Right? And he says, ينظر الروضة وأنوار الروضة. We know the روضة, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Al-Anwar. So the Anwar is a kind of summary of the Rawda as well. But it is useful. So the Anwar, Sheikh Nuh Kella uses this quite a lot in Reliance of the Traveler. It's good because it's broad. And when you're dealing with Reliance of the Traveler, you need to be broad because it doesn't come from the Minhaj. So you need to be a bit more broad. It has some certain masail that won't be in the Minhaj, right? It's not so good because not late enough. Right, so Al-Anwar, where do I have it? It is Anwar. I'm trying to see where it is in history. Oh, it's there. Al-Anwar. So Al-Anwar comes just after Isnawi. All right, so the way I've organized my books um, is so it comes before, like, same time as Zarkashi. So things are still being formed, right? Ibn Mulaqqin comes after that. Damiri comes after that. Um, Wali ad-Din al-Iraqi, the author of the Tahrir, comes after that. Then we have Zakaria Ansari. So it's before Zakaria Ansari, which is kind of makes it a little bit harder, right? So why would I go to the Rawd and not to Anwar? Is because this is more reliable than this, right? But then it says, look, Hashit Sharqawi, the book that we can look at Aslan, and then Al-Hawashi al-Madaniyah, right? So Al-Hawashi al-Madaniyah, these are Hashit al-Kurdi and Termasi. Right? So this is the Hashia on Muqaddimah Hadramiya, right? Al-Hawashi al-Madaniyah. Um, okay, so kitabatuhu. So he says, and then he says, هذا أحد الوجهين. What does al-wajhain mean? The ashab differed, right? And the asah is كذا, as opposed to أحد القولين والأظهر كذا, right? ومسه, you can't touch it. والصلاة والسجود والطواف والخطبة. Why couldn't you do the khutbah?
because for Khatib or Imam, they
So
one of
what
the
happens?
shurut
So Jum'ah replaces Dhuhr. Dhuhr is 4 rak'ahs. Jum'ah is 2 rak'ahs and 2 khutbahs. So each khutbah is like a what?
rak'ah.
Like a rak'ah, right? So the same conditions apply, apart from you can move around, right? And you can speak and you can eat. Right? Okay, well khutbah too, right? Because it's like prayer.
But Sheikh,
Yes,
question is the khutbah part where it's kind of counted as rak'ah, is it only for the khatib, the imam, or is it also for the listeners?
that's only for the khatib. So if you didn't have wudu, you're in janaba and you're in janaba and you're listening to the khutbah outside the masjid. That's fine. So now the issue is how you're going to pray Jum'ah. So then you quickly make ghusl before you start the 2 rak'ahs of Jum'ah, right? Okay. If somebody could share that with share the PDF with Musa, inshallah. وَاللُّبْثُ فِي الْمَسْجِدِ. So you can't remain in a masjid. وَلَهُ أَنْ يَعْبُرَ فِيهِ. You can pass through the masjid, right? You can pass through the masjid. And notice it mentions here this book, إعلام المساجد. Okay, إعلام الساجد. I believe this is the book of Az-Zarkashi. Somebody can double check it. Zarkashi has a book on Ahkam al-Masajid, and then somebody else has a book on it as well. Right. Give me a second, please. So somebody can look that up. I'lam al-Sajid. I believe that's by Az-Zarkashi. My apologies. Okay, where do we get to? So what is the book then? I'lam al-Sajid? Is it by Zarkashi?
Yes, Alam Sajid بأحكام المساجد.
So how reliable is it going to be then? If it's Zarkashi. Zarkashi is before Zakaria Ansari and before Ramli and Ibn Hajar. How reliable is it going to be? not as reliable, right? So you would not start there, right? You would not start there, okay? So you're wasting your time if you're going to do that. You're wasting your time. I remember a key discussion I had with, like, I got to this stage in Mashafi fiqh, like you start off with the late books and then you start going to the earlier books. And I had this like hatred for the late books. Like I really just hate them, right? It's like really, really annoying. Okay. Like I really don't like the Hawashi and all this stuff. Like, oh, I hate this. That was a certain stage, right? Certain thing you love it, and then you hate it. Okay. And so I remember speaking to Sheikh Amjad and I was like, why do we teach? Like, why do you teach books like Yaqut and Nafis? Why do you teach books like Nail al-Raja? Like, why don't you teach earlier books like the Lubab? Like, I love the Lubab. You see my print of the Lubab, I have notes throughout the whole thing. Like I spent a long time with the Lubab, just editing, discussing. Like I find it, I really like it. I like it when they give me the wrong opinion, if that makes sense. So I can look for the right opinion. I like that kind of stuff, right? I'm a kind of messy person, if that makes sense. Like, give me a problem and let's solve it, I don't like super processed things. So I really, really don't like a proper Salafi, right? Um, I don't like late books. So then I'm talking to him and I remember this discussion. I said, why don't you teach like the Tanbih? Why don't you teach the Talkhis of for example, Ibn al-Qas? Why don't you teach, for example, things like that? He says you're gonna waste people's time. That's what it is. You waste people's time. So I'm here. You have a very short amount of time, and I keep mentioning to you kitabatuhu. Like, why'd you mention kitabatuhu? That's not the mu'tamad. Oh, it's not the mu'tamad. Whoops. Right. So now I'm gonna go like, oh yeah, let's do, for example, i'lam al-sajid, but actually it's not all correct. Don't waste people's time. Right. Now, once you've cracked the mu'tamad, I have the Tuhfa in front of me. I have the Nihaya in front of me. I have all these things, all these late books. Okay. And then I want to try and find out why. I'm trying to find out what's going on. I'm trying to understand why are they going in this direction, that direction. Then you start going back. So you start unprocessing, right? You start unprocessing. So you have to go to the final process thing and then start going back. Start looking at Zarkashi. Start looking at Isnawi. Start looking at Imam Nawawi. Start looking back, back, back. Ghazali says this. Oh my God, Ghazali's going a totally different reason, right? And then you're going back to the but you don't start with the You don't start with Imam Shafi because it's extremely unprocessed, right? So you're wasting people's time. So don't do that, right? Here we're not focusing on Muhammad. We're looking at Muhammad, right? So, so here he's saying, so now I'm going to read something like this. Don't start there. Like, so the editor said, oh yeah, وَلَهُ أَنْ يَعْبُرَ فِيهِ. Why are you going to Zarkashi? You should go to Hash al-Sharqawi. Yeah, but that wouldn't look so cool, right? Maybe when they print the book, it wouldn't look so cool if the editor, if the editor didn't do that. It's like, you don't need to do that, right? So what you will find is that the late school, like say last 200 years, you won't even find these books. These books are being printed recently. They wouldn't even be available because everybody's using the late works. Like if I look at my shelf over here, it's like basically nothing is particularly useful before Zarkashi, before Zakaria Ansari. So it's like really there's like one, two, three, four, five, like six shelves. Like I can basically do fatwa with like two shelves. It's fine. They come to my house, like I don't have two shelves. I got a lot of shelves, right? But like the upshot is these things, right? So for your, you know, white belt, yellow belt, whatever karate training, everything's on the late books. Everything's on late books, right? And don't waste your time. Don't waste anybody's time without the late books. And you're going to find gems in the late books. You're also going to find other kind of gems in the early books, different kind of things, right? It's a different world. Does that make sense? Yeah, get everything, buy everything, right? And then goes on to Bab at-Tayammum. Okay. So let's now go to Zakaria Ansari and let's have a look. So he says, ويحرم بالجنابة صلاة ولو نفلا للإجماع ولخبر الصحيحين لا يقبل الله صلاة أحدكم إذا أحدث حتى يتوضأ. Right? So Allah does not accept, it's not valid. ها حتى يتوضأ إذ مقتضاه حرمتها بالحدث الأصغر فبالأكبر أولى. What does that mean? إذ مقتضاه حرمتها بالحدث الأصغر فبالأكبر أولى. What does that mean? مقتضاه means that implies. It's what is implied by that. Exactly. Right. So it says, since the dictates or that implied by that is that it is haram to pray with al-hadath al-asghar, with the lower level of ritual impurity. So with the higher level, awla by a fortiori. Okay, but what's the relationship between al-hurma and the sihha though? So it's haram to pray like that. But is it going to be valid? It's not going to be valid. So everything that's haram is invalid?
No.
So what we're going to say is something that is a prohibition that is unique to an act of worship will make it invalid, right? So for example, hasad, is hasad unique to the prayer? No. So if I have hasad while I'm praying, is the prayer invalid? No. Right? It's not. So it doesn't affect it. As opposed to eating is halal outside of the prayer. Moving around is halal outside of the prayer. Breaking wudu, right? So we're going to say it's going to be that's unique to the prayer. You don't need to be in a state of wudu or ghusl outside of the prayer. So it's unique to it. So therefore, it's going to make it invalid, right? إلا لفاقد الطهورين فيصلي الفرض دون النفل لحرمة الوقت ويقضي. Right, with the exception of فاقد الطهورين, the person who has need, they can't make wudu and can't make tayammum. Like you can't make wudu, you can't make tayammum, you can't make ghusl, there's nothing you can do. So what does he do? يصلي الفرض, right? You pray the fard and not the nafil. Why couldn't you pray the nafil? Okay, yes. So basically with the fard, we have a conflict between a mafsada and a maslaha. The maslaha of praying on time and the mafsada of praying without wudu. Okay, in that scenario, the maslaha is greater because it's the fard. The maslaha of praying a sunnah is not the same. Right? The maslaha of praying a sunnah is not the same. So you have more of a mafsada in praying without wudu than the maslaha. So that's why Sharia doesn't allow it, right? Basically, as Ammar expressed. Right? Doing a nafil, right? Similarly, can you recite a surah? You can't recite a surah because it's haram to recite Quran without in state of ghusl, in state of janaba. But you have to do the Fatiha, right? لحرمة الوقت ويقضي, and he has to make it up according to the school, right? The position of Imam Nawawi, and you might have it in the footnotes here. ويقضي doesn't mention it, but anyway, the position of Imam Nawawi, his ikhtiyar, and the position of I believe al-Muzani and and uh and Ibn Mundhir is that there's no repeating, right? So the issue is, so Imam Nawawi would say, have I been commanded to pray right now? So yes. Okay, so I've done what I've been commanded to do. So yeah, okay, therefore it's valid, right? So validity means doing what you commanded to do, right? So this is really an usuli issue. Like, what does it mean when you say valid, right? So does validity mean isqat al-qada, or does it not, or is it not? So isqat al-qada, not having to do something. Like, does valid mean I've done it, right? Or is it not? Like, how does it work out? So anyway, that's the school is you pray and then you re-pray. And we're going to see this in tayammum. Many scenarios in tayammum, you pray and then you re-pray. That doesn't exist according to Imam Muzani and Imam Ibn Mundhir and Imam Nawawi. The concept doesn't exist. ويقضي إذا قدر على أحدهما وإنما يقضي بالتيمم في محل يسقط فيه الفرض وإلا فلا قضاء إذ لا فائدة فيه. Right? There's no point to begin with. وسجود التلاوة والشكر, right? So this is important for soccer players, right? When they do their sujood and they don't have wudu or no, need to make also whatever. لأنه في معنى الصلاة, because it's the same thing, right? And therefore there's a debate. Can I do tahiyyat al-masjid by doing sujood al-shukr or sujood al-tilawa? Right? Because if it's a prayer from that point of view, is it prayer from the other point of view? Debated. وقراءة قرآن قراءة قرآن ولو بعض آية لخبر الترمذي وقال حسن صحيح عن علي قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقضي حاجته فيقرأ القرآن لم يكن يحجبه وربما قال يحجزه عن القراءة الشيء ليس الجنابة. ليس here means إلا. I don't know if that's a bigger issue, Ammar, and honestly, because I think there's more of a debate on that than there is a debate about praying without doing sujood without wudu. So covering the thigh, exposing the thigh, there's some room in the Shafi school. It's weak, not reliable really. In the Maliki school, there is some discussion there as well. So it's actually less of a problem. They're both a problem, right? But less of a problem. But the issue of praying without doing sujood without wudu, Allahu alam. Like you don't have wudu, you're not facing the qibla, all these kind of things. Allahu alam.
What about the question whether scoring a goal is a ni'mah?
No, that's it. You could do that. That's fine because it is not something like receiving your salary that's expected, right? Waking up in the morning, you can't do sujood sahw for sujood shukr for like waking up in the morning, right? And still being alive because it's kind of normal, even though it is a huge but it's not something. But scoring a goal is a sudden, right? Your baby was born, so well, I expected that for the last 9 months. I know, but it's it doesn't have to happen. Right? The baby can not be born, right? So that's fine. That is hujumu ni'mah. That is a sudden blessing. That's true. But the issue is doing sujood, not facing the qibla, and not having wudu. You don't have wudu, you're not facing the qibla, right? Because it is a prayer at the end of the day. It is a ritual. I remember telling Dr. Ahmed Hassanat, and I said, yeah, I remember when we were little, my mum used to put us in sajda. So we would basically being in the corner. It was like you go and do sajda, right? And he says, that's haram. And I was like, Sheikh, like we were just little kids. He said, yeah, but you can't do that. Like you can't have your kids do a ritual that's invalid as a punishment. You know what I'm saying? So sujood is a ritual. It has to be done in a certain way. You can't just do it however you want. So that's bid'ah, right? That's what he's saying. He's saying exactly what a Salafi would say. It's like it's a bid'ah. Like you can't do the sujood ala kayfak, like just as you like. It doesn't work. It has to be done in a particular way. Like if you want to punish your kids, say go and make wudu and go and do 2 rak'ahs. But you can't just say kids without wudu go into sujood. You can't do that. Right? Are you allowed to go on your head and look for a pen under the sofa? Yeah, you can do that, right? I mean, but that's not sujud. Does that make sense? Or people do it after the prayer, right? They'll give salams, make dua, and they just go in sujud for a bit. You know? You can't do that. There's sujud in a prayer, there's sujud al-shukr, there's sujud al-tilawa. That's it. And according to the Malikis, there's no sujud al-shukr aslan. That doesn't exist. So again, if you want to be a Salafi and your issue is hadith, be Shafi'i. If you want to be a Salafi and your issue is bid'ah, be Maliki. Maliki madhab, the strictest against strictest against bid'ah. Right? And then you're going to see things that where you're right, your system is right and your system is wrong. Does that make sense? It makes sense, guys?
Yes.
Okay. With قراءة القرآن ولو بعض آية, you can't do a single thing. So it mentions يقضي حاجته, you go to the bathroom. فيقرأ القرآن, he would recite Quran after going to the bathroom. ولم يكن يحجبه, nothing would hold his hijab. Right? يحجزه, I believe with a ضمة. بعد الجيم وقوله ربما قال يحجزه ضم الجيم يحجزه. Right? من باب نصر. Right? لم يكن يحجزه. So nothing would hold him back. عن القرآن, anything. ليس الجنابة تا. Right? ليس means إلا الجنابة. Right? Nothing would hold him back apart from janaba. You could say al-janaba tu or al-janaba ta here. So it's al-janaba ta khabaruha. So it says, here he's treating it as al-real laysa. وقيل بمعنى إلا برواية إلا الجنابة تو. فالجملة بعدها استثنائية أي غير صفة. Right? And so I think there's different ways you can do i'rab. I think can we treat it as a harf, or we can treat it as laysa. Right? These two things. And then he says بقصدها. Aha. So now when you say you recite the Quran, you did it with its intention. Okay, so what's our dalil for that? Our dalil is, can you say Alhamdulillah? So of course you can say Alhamdulillah. Oh, but that's Quran. So yeah, but I didn't say Alhamdulillah as Quran. I said Alhamdulillah, just Alhamdulillah. Right? So now we extend that to all Quran. Right? So in the Shafi school, that means you can actually do the whole of the Quran. You can do the whole of the Quran as non-Quran, if that makes sense. So it says بقصدها أي بقصد القراءة. I'm intending to do the ritual of reciting the Quran. فإن لم يقصدها لم تحرم. It's not haram. لأنه إنما سمي قرآنا بالقصد. Okay? So it says ومحله إذا كان مما يوجد نظمه في غير القرآن. So here he makes in this qaid. ومحله. Right? He says محله أي ما ذكر من التفصيل بين القصد وعدمه. So he says, here is something that a sound that exists in the Quran and exists outside of the Quran. Okay? So like Alhamdulillah, like Bismillah. Okay? Like Subhana سخرنا هذا وما كنا له مقرنين وإنا إلى ربنا لمنقلبون. Right? That's in the Quran and that's outside of the Quran. It's a dhikr outside of the Quran and inside of the Quran. So he says, when you said Subhana di sakharana hada, did you mean recite the Quran or did you mean to be dua? I said, I meant dua. Okay, it's fine. So he puts a condition, he says, well, mahalluhu, the whole concept here is assuming that it doesn't exist, that it exists outside of the Quran as well. So he says, the phrase exists out of the Quran and you didn't intend the Quran. That's what he's saying. That's what Shaykh al-Islam is saying. Okay? ومحله إذا كان مما يوجد نظمه في غير القرآن كقوله عند المصيبة إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون مثلا. وإلا فيحرم مطلقا. It's haram. So if it doesn't exist outside the Quran, it's going to be mutlaq, it's going to be haram, even if you don't intend the Quran thereby. Okay? Make sense? Everyone's following what Zakaria Ansari is saying?
Afwan, sorry. Can you repeat the last point again?
So Zakaria Ansari is saying that for it to be halal to recite Quran, you have to A, not intend Quran thereby, and B, it has to that the nazam, those words have to exist outside of the Quran as well. Okay, so somebody died, you said Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. You didn't mean I'm reciting the Quran. You just meant like, oh, we all belong to Allah. Does that make sense? Right. So is that mu'tamad? There we go. So he says وَقَصْدُ وَحَلُّهُ إِذَا كَانَ مِمَّا يُوجَدُ نَظْمُهُ فِي غَيْرِ القرآن. It says وَإِلَّا, if it's not found outside the Quran, okay, فَيَحْرُمُ مُطْلَقًا. In the حاشية محله أي ما ذكر من التفصيل بين القصد وعدمه وهذا ضعيف والمعتمد أنه لا فرق بين ذلك وبين ما لا يوجد نظمه أي لفظه إلا فيه كآية الكرسي وسورة الإخلاص. So I was reciting Ayat al-Kursi not as Quran but as protection. That's fine. Okay, I recited the whole Quran as something else. All right. So can you see now why I'll be weary that Zakaria Ansari himself might not be mu'tamad. So now you're gonna go before Zakaria Ansari. It's like you kind of Does that make sense? So that's why our Shafi'i life begins with Ramli and Ibn Hajar and Khatib. That's our life, right? The ikhtilaf between them, fine, not an issue, right? But when you go back before that, suddenly you're wasting time, right? You're not really wasting time, right? And this is also the position of Zarkashi. I believe Khatib mentions it as the qawl of Zarkashi. Like this is Zarkashi's opinion, right? So it's interesting. Why not? Wallahu a'lam. So Sharqawi is saying this. Well, mu'tamad, he means what Ramli says. That's what he means. Well, mu'tamadu kada, he means what Ramli says. Because Sharqawi is a Ramliist. Theoretically, you could recite everything as dhikr. Yes, you could. So Khatib, I think, mentions that. Khatib specifically, if you did a khatam, like min bab tabarruk, or a khatam as for isti'adha or something like that, you could do that. Should you do that, or should you follow the weaker position? Right, the weaker position is more precautionary, right? And then what does this tell us about ijtihad? Like, when did ijtihad end?
It
Like,
didn't end.
It didn't end, that's true. But if you wanted to, like on this particular issue, like you could go from the Sahaba and Tabi'een and their discussion, go all the Sahaba and Tabi'een, the Imam Malik and these people, Imam Shafi'i, and go down, 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 and you could actually put a point, and you could say, look, Farid Dingles asked this question, and he said, you can do it. And he quoted Sharqawi. And Sharqawi is when? What's his date? Like something like not Sharqawi, but say Ramli, right? So we're talking 400 years ago. So you can say ijtihad on this issue ended 400 years ago. It did not end with the Imams, that's for sure, right? And then in reality, should it stop with Ramli and Ibn Hajar? No, it shouldn't, right? We shouldn't stop with them. We were still going to think about it. And so you will find, particularly the Yemenis, right? The Yemenis, they won't necessarily do total submission to Ibn Hajar Ramli. Right? Maybe Ba Makhrama has another position. Maybe somebody else has something else, Ibn Ziyad. Maybe other people. There might be other people. You see, the idea that people stopped thinking is just wrong, right? The issue is, show me that you can play the game. That's all. Show me that you can play the game. Okay. So then he says, ويجوز لفاقد الطهورين قراءة الفاتحة في الصلاة بل تجب كما صححه النووي. Right? It's not just permissible, it's actually obligatory. Right? So the issue then, again, so we're talking about maqasid, right? Maqasidiyun, people who talk about the maqasid. what this maqasid is doing? It's trying to say, I know I have to pray because I'm in because of the time. When you say I have to pray, do I also have to do the Quran? So yes. Okay, so but where's the pros and cons there, right? How is the Sharia weighing up the pros and cons, the masalih and the mafasid of reciting the Quran without being in being in janaba, right? Which is haram. At the same time, having to pray. How does this work out, right? So the Salafi bid'ah police on one side is 100% what we're doing. They're just doing it the wrong way. Similarly, the Maqasidiyun, other people who say, yeah, let's have lesbian marriages and let's change this and change that. What they're doing is right. The way they're doing it is wrong. So Maqasid 100, and we are at the Shafi school, we use the Maqasid the least, but we do it all the time. We're always playing with Maqasid, right? Pros and cons, right? All the time. Yes, it would be haram to do any of the surah because it's not wajib. Because it's not a condition of the prayer, you can't do it. ومسه وحمله أي القرآن بمس وحمل بمس وحمل. Okay? بمس وحمل. What is the word mas mudaf to? It says A al-Quran بمس وحمل ما هو. What's the word mas mudaf to? Yeah. So can you usually do that? Can you have a gap between the mudaf and mudaf ilayh? No, you cannot. So this is not good Arabic. Okay. You should say بِمَسِّ ما هو da 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 وحمله. That's what you say. بيت زيد وسيارته. That's normal Arabic. Okay. It does exist. It is not totally invalid, but this is generally like bad Arabic. Okay. You don't usually say that. بِمَسِّ وحمل ما هو. You don't usually do that. You say بيت زيد وسيارته. Right? Make sense? So بمس ما هو فيه وبحمل ما هو فيه من مصحف وغيره مما كتب هو فيه للدراسة. It was written for people to read from. أي القراءة وخرج بذلك ما كتب فيه للتبرك. Right? For example, you have a bowl and it has Ayat al-Kursi written in the middle of it. But nobody wrote Ayat al-Kursi for somebody going to read it from there. Right? Or كالتميمة. Right? So you have like a tamima, which is called ta'wiz, right? وهي ورقة يكتب فيها شيء من القرآن وتعلق للتبرك, right? فإذا كتب القرآن كله لا يقال له تميمة, right? Um, he says ويجوز كتابة التميمة للكافر على المعتمد, right? So your friend is a non-Muslim, he's having trouble. He said, listen, I'll give you this talisman if you want. Some blessed sayings. He's like, yeah, please. قال سين ميم. This is Ibn Qasim on the Tuhfa. ينبغي المنع لأنها لم تنقص عن آثار السلف بل تزيد عليها. Right? So he's mentioning two positions here. It says the mu'tamid is you can do that. So Sharqawi is saying yes, you can. You can give, you can, if we're non-Muslim, you can do that. But so Ibn Qasim is saying you cannot do that. Why? Because it's no less than Athar al-Salaf. So the Athar of the Salaf, anything religious we cannot give to a non-Muslim. So you cannot give, for example, sayings of Hassan al-Basri to a non-Muslim. Can't do that. So he says, بل تزيد عليه, it's even more sacred. So how can you do that, right? So Ibn Qasim saying you cannot do that. Okay, so you can see a debate there among, so Sin Mim, Ibn Qasim on the Tuhfa, right? Ibn Qasim al-Abbadi, not Ibn Qasim al-Ghazi. Ibn Qasim al-Ghazi is the Sharih of Matan Abi Shuja', right? Ibn Qasim, and he has other books as well. Ibn Qasim has, I think he has a hashia on the, he has a hashia, I think, on Matan Abi Shuja' as well. Ibn Qasim al-Abbadi. So on the Tuhfa we have Ibn Qasim al-Abbadi and Sharwani, and Sharwani is from Dagestan originally. Okay, and on the Nihaya we have Al-Rashidi, and we have Shabra Mallisi. Shabra Mallisi. Okay. So we're going to see Sin Mim a lot. Ibn Qasim. Right.
Ibn Qasim is mostly known for the Sharh of Abu Shuja', yeah?
Yeah, that's Ibn Qasim Al-Ghazi. That's another Ibn Qasim. So Sharh Ibn Qasim al-Matan Shuja', that's Ibn Qasim Al-Ghazi from Gaza. This is Ibn Qasim Al-Abbadi. Okay. وغيره مما كتب وهو في الدراسة. So it's written for people to read from. If it was not written for people to read from, it's not called Quran. Like a lawh, right? Here's a lawh. Can you touch the lawh? You can't touch the letters, but can you hold the lawh? Yes, you can. Right? He says مما كتب هو فيه أي كلوح والمراد به ما يعد ما ما يعد لوحا عرفا. What is considered a lawh? What is considered a what's it called? What do you call it? A lawh is like a thing you put on the wall. What's the word? Not tablet. It's a frame. Frame you put on the wall. Right? Lawh. Like a poster. فلو كبر جدا. Right? So it says فلو كبر جدا كباب عظيم. So there's this huge door or a pillar وجدار لم يحرم مس الخالي منه. So there's this huge, the door of the masjid has إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا, super huge, right? So you can touch the area that doesn't have Quran on it. That's not considered. The whole thing is not considered. So like the lawh, you have this huge thing which has beautiful calligraphic things not designed to be read from. You can just touch the area around it. إلا إذا كان حريما من القرآن ويحرم وحمله كحمل المصحف في أمتعة. Like you could carry a mushaf in a bag. ولو something ولو من اللوح أو ورق بحيث لم يبق له. ولو محي. ولو إمحى to be raised, to be raised away. In maha from the word maha, to erase. in maha. ولو إنمحى من اللوح أو الورق بحيث لم يبق له أثر لم يبعد جواز المس والحمل. Right? So you had a piece of paper had Quran on it, and then it was in pencil, and it raised away so much you couldn't read it. He says لم يبعد جواز المسح. It's quite likely that it's permissible. He doesn't know. Okay.
Like in Somalis, we have tradition where we have the law, the wooden one, where you write, and then even when cleaning, the area is secluded, like where the ink that is used for the writing. When you like clean off the Quran that was written on the law, where you're cleaning it, the ink also is like we are asked not to go like do anything wrong with it.
Yeah, that's that, but that's adaban, right? Adaban. But here's the issue. So imagine this lawh is used for two things. This lawh is used for writing Quran. You use it for memorizing Quran, and you also use it memorizing fiqh, right? So now is the lawh itself considered Quran? No, it's not, right? So now you erase the ink. It's not Quran anymore. That piece of wood is not considered Quran, right? As opposed to a box, there is a Quran box that you put the mushaf in. So that Quran box is considered part of the mushaf until you use the box for something else, right? Okay. So anyway, I'm not sure if you're going to mention the sharh. Yeah, so carrying, he's going to mention here. وحمل ما فيه إشارة إذا دفع ما يقال أن القرآن يطلق على لفظ So he says مصحف بتثليث الميم. What does that mean? مصحف بتثليث الميم. So you can say mishaf and mushaf and mushaf, right? Mishaf, the tool of pages. Mushaf, the place of pages. Mushaf, the place where pages have been added, right? So it says وَمِثْلُهُ جِلْدُهُ, the outer, the binding. وَهَامِشِهِ, the edges. And منفصلين, even if they've come off. حيث لم قطع نسبتها عنه, as long as you, so the page just fell off, and there's a page, for example, in the Saudi Mus'haf that says, don't reprint, but that page you consider it as part of the Mus'haf. It's not something else. The binding that's fallen off. حيث لم تنقطع نسبته, so it's the binding that came off, but it's not become used for anything else. That's considered still Mus'haf. أما إذا انقطعت بأن جعل الأول جلد كتاب, right? Oh, we use that thing has now come off. We now use it for something else, right? Then it's something else.
So if I have like traditionally they have like the outer cover made from like hide and skin. So if some of scholars they don't have many of them, so they can like when they are going for dars, like they can carry maybe mushaf in that cover, and then next time they'll carry another book of fiqh in that cover.
Yeah,
So
so
that's the
now
need.
if you look at it as a Quran cover that you use for something else, it's considered Quran. But if it is, though, this is just a bag that I use to carry books, then it's fine. So it's going to go back to Orf. How do we look at this thing? Okay.
Okay.
And he says, الثاني التميمة لم يحرم مسها ولا حملها ويحرم أيضا مس البياض المتخلل والحواشي المتصلة. So it says, it mentions the tamima again, the talisman. It's not haram to touch it. So the issue then is taking the tamima into the bathroom. Okay. So the relied upon position is that you can take a mushaf into the bathroom as long as it's in a bag or something like that. Right? You have a mushaf in your bag, you walk into the bathroom. So tamima should be the same thing, wallahu a'lam. But anyway, the point is the tamima is not considered Quran. But ideally, you should be more careful, right? You have a net talisman around your neck, you have something like that, you take it off, leave it with your friend. Right? That's a better thing to do. Okay. So now carrying in a bag. So I have a bag. I have this huge bag, and the only point of this huge bag is my mushaf. All the other things in it are useless. I don't want any of those things. Can I pick up this bag? No, you cannot. As opposed to, I have a small bag. It has a mushaf and has a phone in it. I put my phone in it, and I put my mushaf, and I pick up the bag. What are you doing? I'm picking up my bag, right? So it's fine. So when you pick up a bag, you are not touching the mushaf and you're just picking up things, that's fine. But if you're picking up things with the sole intention of the mushaf, that is haram. You can't do that. Okay, so then it says, قال تعالى لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. Nobody can touch it apart from the purified. Okay? وهو خبر بمعنى النهي. Right? It's a statement. Nobody touches it apart from the pure, meaning don't touch it. Right? والحمل أبلغ من المس. Right? والمطهر بمعنى المتطهر. The purified means the ones who purify themselves. إلا إذا كان في متاع, unless you're carrying it in a bag, فيحل حمله معه تبعا له. Right? تبعا له لأنه المقصود. Right? The whole point is you're carrying the bag. فلو قصده ولو مع المتاع حرم. If you intended, I only intended me to pick up the mushaf, and I'm going to pick it up with everything else. I only intend the mushaf, then it's going to be haram. ويحرم مس خريطة وصندوق فيهما. Right? A bag or a case or a string, something like that. ومس جلة تبعا له وتعبير بمتاع أولى من تعبيرهم بأمتعة. Right? Luggage as opposed to luggages. Bag as opposed to bags. Right? وخرج بمسه وحمله كتابته الخالية عنهما. Right? Writing it when you are not touching the page. وقلب ورقة بعود. Right? And to turn the page over. Here, just put a little note. See Bushra Kareem, because there's a bit more details here. When you say turning the pages, what do you mean? Right? Did you mean picking up the pages? Because imagine, for example, the pages are not bound. So you're picking up the page with your pen, right? So you're picking up the page as opposed to turning the pages. So there's a difference between carrying versus turning. وَالنَّظَرْ فِيهِ, right? Can you look at the Mus'haf? Yes, you can. ومس وحمل التوراة والإنجيل وما نسخت تلاوته فيحل. Right. خير. He says وخط. Everyone's following?
Yes.
Notice here, look in the hashia. So it says So it says أُعِدَّ له, something that was specifically, it's a mushaf carrier, a mushaf box alone, as opposed to a box that you put books in. Right? So he says وَأَمَّا إِذَا أُعِدَّ لِغَيْرِهِ, like this thing is for putting books on in general. You can touch that. كالخزائن, right? Like shelves. فإنه يحرم مسح ما حاذا المصحف منها. So the where the mushaf the mushaf is being sitting right next to it. That's what you can't touch. وأما إذا عد لغيره أو له ولغيره. We did that. قال ابن حجر ومثله كرسي وضع عليه. So the Quran stand. You cannot touch the Quran stand without wudu, because it was built for the Quran. If it was a stand that you put books on, fine. But if it's a Quran stand specifically, you can't do that. So notice he says, وَحُرْمَةُ مَسْحِ جَمِيعِهِ وَإِنْ كَبُرَ, even if it's really, really big. Why? لِأَنَّهُ مُعَدٌّ لَهُ وَحْدَهُ, because it was only made for the Quran, as opposed to here's a stand to put books on, right? So it says, فَلَا يَحْرَمُ مَسْحُ ظَرْفِ الْمُصْحَفِ, it is only haram to touch the container of the mushaf بشرطين, أن يكون فيه, that the mushaf is inside it, وأن يكون معدا له, right? That it was made for it, وحده alone, as opposed to something else, right? It was made for, in general, generally made for carrying things. And it mentions that. And he says here as well, وَكَذَا مَسُهُ وحمله حال كونه مكتوبا في دنانير أو ثياب أو جدار. So وكذا مسه وحمله حال كونه مكتوبا في دنانير. So a coin that has money on it, that's halal. Clothes, can you wear clothes that has written on it? Yes, you can. Or on the wall. ويجوز النوم في تلك الثياب, you can sleep in those clothes, right? وأما التفسير كتفسير فإن كان أكثر من القرآن يقينا حل حمله. So you pick up تفسير الطبري. Definitely تفسير الطبري, most of it is تفسير and is not مصحف. وإلا لم وإلا لم يحرم عند الشك. Right? So now if you're 50-50, وإلا فلا يحرم عند الشك. If it's 50-50, you're not sure. Okay, ومن التفسير, there's an L dropped here. ومن التفسير على الهوامش yeah, there's a debate here. So here, what if it wasn't intermixed? So it's not a text that's intermixed Quran and tafsir, but rather there's the mushaf in the middle, and and on the edges there's tafsir. Okay. Anyway, so Sharqawi mentioned something here. Just put a little footnote, go back to Bushra Kareem. Bushra Kareem and Hawash Madaniya has more details. Doesn't have all the details here. Okay. Okie dokie. وخطبة جمعة لأنها في معنى الصلاة. Right? وخرج بزيادة جمعة خطبة غيرها. Right? فلا تحرم. So what about Jum'ah, the khutbah of Eid? Can you do the khutbah of Eid in Janaba? Yes, you could. Right? Because it's not Jum'ah. Now, where's the problem in the argument?
It has something to do with another madhab?
So here it says خطبة العيد والكسوف فلا تحرم بل تكون مكروهة أو خلاف الأولى. right? So if we say, so what's the argument then is Dhuhr was cut in half and was turned into 2 rak'ahs of Jum'ah and 2 khutbahs. So therefore, the khutbah is like the prayer. So therefore, you have to be pure, you have to be in physical and ritual state of purity, have your aura covered, etc. But then, can you pray a sunnah prayer without wudu? Right. So on Eid, the two khutbahs, excuse me, the two khutbahs are sunnah. But why can't we just say they're like sunnah prayers, right? So if there's like a sunnah prayer, then you're gonna have to have wudu, right? And then Ujab, what's the response? Habibi, what are the conditions of the Eid prayer, of the Eid khutbah? Nothing, right? So we say basically the conditions, the conditions of the all the conditions of the Jum'ah khutbah are all sunnah in the khutbah of Eid. So you didn't say Alhamdulillah, you didn't say Ittaqullah, you didn't do anything, so not a big deal. So it's kind of like it's not really a ritual, if you know what I mean. Like there's no particular form. It's all recommended. If you didn't even give the khutbah to begin with, it'd be fine. Does that make sense? So that's why they're going to say, yeah, go ahead, do the khutbah without, because it's not really a ritual, right? So if you flipped it and said, listen, you don't have to do the khutbah, but if you're going to do it, it has to be like this, then we could argue, no, then you have to have wudu because it is actually a ritual and it stands in the stead of the prayer. Does that make sense? Right. So you got to go one way or the other, basically. Right. And so maybe somebody could check in the Rawda or the Minhaj and see if there's a discussion here. Like, do you have to have wudu for the khutbah of Eid and see if it's a genuine argument or not. Allahu a'lam. Okay, and he says وَالطَّوَافُ وَلَوْ نَفْلًا, right? لخبري quote الطواف بالبيت بمنزلة الصلاة إلا أن الله قد أحل فيه المنطق. What's المنطق? Logic? Speech, thank you. So mantiq does not mean logic. Mantiq means speech. Okay? So how did you get from speech to logic? What does logic mean in Greek anyway? What's logos? When we say psychology, biology, right? We have this little logy at the word. What does that mean? Logos, right? In Christians, to talk about Jesus is the logos. It means the word, thank you, right? Talking about, right? So logic means it's from the word logos, the word. Okay. So now in Arabic, how does that work out? So now you are translating, Farabi and these people are translating Aristotelian logic to Arabic, and they're like, what's the word, right? Or the good word or the smart word. Okay. Now you're gonna try and find out how you're gonna say that. You call it the kalam? Not really. Mantiq is a masdar mimi. Masdar mimi is a masdar. So there's nutq, which means to speak, and there's mantiq, which means to speak. But nutq is speaking. Mantiq is like real speaking. Like, when people say like word, right? Like that's right, That's what it means. Like the real proper way of saying things. Like it's logical. Does that make sense? So that's how we get from the word mantiq, right? But otherwise it just means speaking, right? Somebody is mintiq, they are loquacious, they speak a lot. Mintiq or miqwal. Okay? Does that make sense? So mantiq means speech originally. Or قد أحل فيه المنطق, right? It means you can speak. فمن نطق فلا ينطق إلا بخير رواه الحاكم وصححه على شرط مسلم, right? So what am I going to do now to check if this is to check this, right? It's probably not that amazing, right? So we notice that mutaakhirin, we will rely on Ibn Hibban and Hakim as if it was divine writ, right? As if it was khalas, end of story. In reality, it's not that simple, right? If you go back to Imam Shafi'i, right? If you go back to Imam Shafi'i, I don't know what proof he's going to use, right? I don't know what he would use here, right? So maybe somebody can have a look, Musa or anybody else, have a look in the Bayhaqi, right? Ma'rifat Sunan wa Athar by Bayhaqi, see what he quotes as proofs. You can have a look also in the Kitab al-Umm. Sometimes you will find these hadith that are in like Ibn Khuzaymah or Hakim. They are narrated by Imam Shafi, but Imam Shafi is what, like 2 generations before, or more than that. So al-Hakim is Ibn Hibban 360, I believe. Al-Hakim is 405, and Al-Bayhaqi is 450, unless I'm mistaken. So 205 or 204, right? 405. 200 years Hakim is later, right? So his chains are going to be really different, right? So Allahu A'lam. So what's the proof that you have to have wudu in tawaf? I don't know. Have a look in the Have a look in yeah, I have Mukhtasar Muzni right next to me at the I'm opening the whole thing up right now. Kitab sorry, in Mukhtasar Muzni, what does it mention here? I don't know. But have a look in. Anyway, Bayhaqi's works are very often very useful. You realize that the proofs are very different to what we might think. So there's also a dalil that ijtihad never ended. Does my proof have to be the same as your proof? No, because I'm not doing taqleed of you. So maybe the proof of the mutaakhirin might be stronger than the proof of the mutaqaddimin, right? Like I have a proof that's better than Imam Shafi's proof. Why not? Because I'm not, it's not, so 97. So all it mentions, it says, so he says here in this is Mukhtasar Muslim. So ولا يجزئ الطواف إلا ما تجزئ به الصلاة من الطهارة من الحدث وغسل النجس فإن أحدث توضأ أو ابتدأ وإن بنى. That's what he just says. Doesn't say why. Just says you need to have wudu. That's all. Allahu Alam. So maybe you can have a look in the and sometimes the dalil is actually more kind of, it's more like, okay, that's what the general salaf, like you'll find, for example, there's really, like the hadith that we use is arguably weak, but you just find, for example, jumhur of the salaf all understanding that in tawaf you have to have wudu, right? So, like, where did they get that from? I don't know where they got them from, but basically, for someone like Imam Shafi'i, jumhur of the salaf, khalas, he's just going to state it as a fact, as if it was ijma'. You know what I'm saying? So often it is often the case that nai ijma' is basically ijma'. Does that make sense? And interesting things that I'll just compare that against where is it? Ibn Mundhir. Where's the Ibn Mundhir? You look at Ibn Mundhir. So Ibn Mundhir is like a generation, well, not like century later. For where it is here, because here's the, I don't think the Awsat of Ibn Mundhir is complete, but at least my version not complete. I think it's not really there. Can't see it now. Anyway, have a look, guys. It's interesting. It's an interesting experience in looking through like what's your dalil. Because it's a bit funny, like your dalil is hadith rawahu Hakim. So before Hakim, what was your dalil? You know, like what were they saying? It's just interesting to see how they phrase it. Allahu a'lam. Um, وَلُبْثُ مُسْلِمٍ بِالْمَسْجِدِ. Notice that Hamli didn't mention that. He just said remaining in the masjid. He says لُبْثُ مُسْلِمٍ بِمَسْجِدٍ. Right? So he says, oh, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قال تعالى لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم أي لا تقربوا الصلاة أي مواضعها وأنتم سكارى حتى تعلموا ما تقولون ولا جنبا. Don't go close to the places of prayer, أي masjids, إلا عابري سبيل حتى تغتسلوا. نعم يجوز لبثه فيه للضرورة. So you woke up in the morning, you had a wet dream. And someone's right كأن نام فيه فاحتمل وتعذر خروجه, right, لخوف من what does it say, من عسعس من عدو or something. لخوف من, I don't know what this word is here. ونحوه, some kind of thing. خوف من, لكن يلزمه التيمم, right. وخرج بالمسجد الرباط ونحوه, it's not a masjid, right. So then he says, some another question. السنن الكبير معرفة السنن والآثار by البيهقي. المجموع so the books of Ibn Mundhir are good because he's not necessarily agreeing with the school, so it's kind of useful. And then also Musannaf Abdul Razzaq, Musannaf Ibn Abi Shayba. So now you're going to get this general, so what you'll often find is Why is it they went in that direction? Like the hadith could be understood in more than one way. Why did we go that way? And you realize, oh, hang on a minute. Or on the Muwatta as well, right? You see the athar of the Salaf, and you're like, oh man, I didn't realize how important these are, right? Also the Musnad of Imam Shafi'i. So there's a sharh on it by Imam Rafi'i. Imam Rafi'i has a sharh on the Musnad of Imam Shafi'i. And there's many other books they're gonna have, but I'm trying. This is basically we already have a dalil, right? He mentioned the dalil, so late scholars are gonna mention that, right? But I just want to know before Hakim, what was this the dalil? What were they suggesting? You know. Also, uh, yeah. So just look at the books that are early. What else this early? Um, so I wouldn't look there, but look Kitab al Yeah, Kitab al as well. So because Mukhtasar al-Muzani is a summary of the so it might be there. But you'll see that it's harder to read the than you imagine. Okay. So basically يجوز لبثه فيه لضرورة. Of course, right? We already knew that. Right? Anything's halal for ضرورة. لكن يلزمه التيمم وخرج بالمسجد الرباط ونحوه. So a religious area is not a masjid. وهو ظاهر. وبالمسلم الكافر فلا يمنع من ذلك لعدم اعتقاد حرمته. So this is a problem. So basically, we have this nas where we have kuffar taken as prisoners and brought into the masajid. These kuffar are obviously in janaba. So how do we explain it? We say لعدم اعتقاد حرمته, because he doesn't think it's haram. So that's a problem then. So are you trying to say then that the kuffar are غير مخاطبين بالفروع? Is that what you're saying? Because that's what the Hanafis say, right? The Hanafis could do that. Hanafis can look at a non-Muslim in a masjid and say, well, because he's a non-Muslim, it's not haram for him to be in a masjid in janaba. When he becomes Muslim, he has to make ghusl, right? We don't say that though, do we? Right? We say it's haram to facilitate a kafir doing something haram. Like, right? So wine, whatever it is, helping him drink wine, pork, helping him swear. He's like, how do you spell this swear word? Like, you can't do that. You can't say, well, he doesn't think it's haram, so it's okay. You can't do that, right? So fihi ma fihi. This is why I believe Imam al-Muzani says that yes, a kafir can be in a masjid, and a junub can be in a masjid, right? And I believe also this is also the position of who is it? The Spanish Ibn Hazm. Ibn Hazm says you can be being in the masjid on your period or in janaba is fine, because look, there was a woman who used to clean the masjid, so presumably at some time she was on her period, and look, kuffar were brought to the masjid, right? So there we go. That's your dalil, right? Now I remember, so inshallah, I remember discussing this with Dr. Ahmed Hassanat, right? The current Mufti of Jordan. And I was like, listen, I am in an Islamic school, and our classrooms are the masjid. We don't have any other classrooms. That's it. So we have these two parts of the masjid broken into 6 classrooms, sometimes even 7 classrooms. Very difficult. Very difficult situation. So can we follow this weak position that you can be in the masjid in janaba and then by extension while menstruating? So the question is, when you said by extension, is there a nas on that? Because is it true that everything that's halal in janaba is halal when you're menstruating? Is that true? Like the analogy from janaba to menstruation, is it really the same? Is it the same, guys?
No.
It's not. So now I come along and I have one line objection from al-Muzani that says that a junub can be in the masjid. Okay, the junub can be in the masjid. Now that because that's not the school, is it going to have lots of details? No. Is it going to have lots of furu'? No. Is there going to be dabt of the mas'ala? Like, what does it mean? No. So now I have to try and find a proof that that means that the ha'id can be in the masjid. That's quite difficult, right? So the Hanbalis, for example, specifically mentioned that the junub could be in the masjid if he makes wudu, but not the ha'id. She can't do that. She can't just make wudu. So that's a bit of a problem. So here's this issue. So I was having this discussion with different people, and they said, "Khalas, the position exists. It's okay, and there's a need." Da, 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 da. Fantastic. Dr. Ahmed Hassanat said no. So in principle, right? In principle, these ikhtiyarat or these awjuh al-da'ifa, they're in principle you could do amal on them. In principle, in practice, it's not the same, right? And this is the importance of talaqqi. You just have a rule. Oh, any weak position you can follow, but you can't give fatwa on. What, any weak position? Anything? Some of these positions are going to be, because they're not mu'tamad, there's no details on them. Right? It's much easier to deal with, for example, an ikhtiyar of Imam Nawawi because that ikhtiyar is clear. You even have the muhashin specifying it. What do you mean? How? When? What's going on? But when I don't have dabt of a qawl, I don't know exactly what you mean. Right? It's going to be seriously problematic. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right? Now look, so anyway, this mas'ala really should go back to the mas'ala of, so we know that kuffar were brought to the masjid as prisoners or as delegations. We know that. So the question is, are kuffar? So the question is for the Hanafis. Hanafis, how do you explain that? Right? So now I'm talking to my Salafi friend, and he doesn't even know that mas'ala. Are the kuffar mukhatabuna bi-furu' sharia am la? And he's like, huh? What? Like, no, no, no. You got to go either the Hanafi way, which is yes, you can give food to your non-Muslim friend in Ramadan. In the Shafi school, you can't. Right? So it should be the same. It should so the same thing. How in what capacity were they let into the masjid? Is it because you can be in the masjid in Janaba, or is it because they're kuffar, or is it a combination? So we say combination, but our answer is a bit funny. Right? Our answer is a little bit funny. Does that make sense? Because it says here بخلاف استعماله الطعام في رمضان فيمتنع منه. So it says in contradistinction to feeding food to somebody in Ramadan فيمنع منه لأنهم يعتقدون وجوب الصوم وإن أخطأوا في تعيين وقته. Can you see Sharqawi's argument? He's saying the kuffar believe in the obligation of fasting, but they just don't know when you can fast. Kuffar believe in the obligation to fast? Well, I'm an atheist. Right. So what he's talking about is, I live in Egypt, and the world consists of Muslims and Jews and Christians, right? And these Copts, they fast, so they believe in general, right? But that's not the world, is it? Right? It's not really, that's not the world, right? That's not a very good argument, right? That makes sense, guys? So fihi ma fihi, right? Fihi ma fihi. So the school is a believer in janaba cannot be in the masjid. A believer in cannot be in the masjid. A kafir in janaba can be in the masjid. Okay. Now what about and presumably you can double check this, and the ha'idah as well. The ha'id, right? That she's a non-Muslim ha'id, she can also be in the masjid, right? Um. Okay. Okay, makes sense, guys?
Yes.
Um, ولا يمنع من ذلك لعدم اعتقاد. So the issue is here why, right? In reality, لا يمنع من ذلك للدليل, right? Our actual reason is because of the dalil that it happened time the Prophet ﷺ, right? And he says وذكرت في شرح الأصل فوائد. So maybe somebody can look that up. I think I think Murabit shared the PDF some time ago. I don't know where it was. He shared the PDF somewhere in the group. Here it is. This is on 26th of October. So somebody can look that up. See what are these fawaid that he mentioned. Right? What did he mention here about the discussion? Right? So I'm not trying to say he's wrong. I'm trying to say fihi ma fihi, there's a discussion here. There's kind of an issue. Right? So again, if we were Hanafis, it would make sense, but we're not. So we're kind of like, what's going on? Right? And there are many masail. Again, there's many masail, many ahadith that support the general idea of the Hanafis that the non-Muslim does not have to abide by the Sharia. For example, Sayyidina Umar being given silk and being allowed to give it to his brother to wear. Right? So like if you can give it to your brother to wear, and it's haram for men to wear silk, that means wafar, right? But then you're going to follow that camp then. Follow that whole thing. Right? So this is a discussion. Whenever you're involved in a debate, you've got to say, are we talking about specifics or are we talking about high level things? Is the debate here, do you fundamentally disagree with communism or is it how we're applying communism? So I fundamentally disagree with communism. Then don't come and don't come and discuss with me in furu'. Come discuss with me in usul. Go to, now we're going to go, is it communism or is it something else? Right? So this is how the discussion has to happen. Is it an usuli discussion or is it a furu'i discussion? If it's in furu', okay, we'll discuss that. But if it's in usul, you're going to have to go back there and then go to the different discussion. Go somewhere else, right? If you believe in that, go somewhere else, right? Like Imam Tahawi changed madhabs. He doesn't, right? He wasn't just a Shafi'i that was disagreeing with the Shafi'is. He changed madhabs. He became Hanafi. Different methodology, totally. Okay, then he goes to al-aghsal al-masnuna. So he says غسل جمعة واستسقاء, right? Isn't that amazing that you do when there's lack of rain and lack of water, you do ghusl for istisqa? That's kind of interesting, right? That's like somebody who, if you're poor, go and give charity, right? If you're poor, go and get married. That's what you do, right? Obviously, you don't give all your water away, right? وَكُسُوف لِحَاضِرِيهَا, or for those who want to attend, not for the day. Okay, so Jum'ah is not recommended for anybody on Jum'ah. It is recommended for those people going to Jum'ah, right? أي لمريد حضورها لا اجتماع الناس لها أو لاجتماع الناس لها وفي الصحيحين خبري إذا جاء أحدكم الجمعة, when you are coming to Jum'ah. So there's a lady, she wants to go to Jum'ah, go and make ghusl. There's a lady who exists on Jum'ah day. Should you make ghusl? No. وصرفه عن الوجوب خبر الترمذي وحسنه من توضأ يوم الجمعة فبها ونعمت, right? ومن اغتسل فالغسل أفضل وقوله فبها أي فبالسنة أخذ ونعمة الخصلة. What a wonderful thing that is. Yeah, perhaps as well, yeah. Okay, inshallah, we'll stop here. والغسل معها أفضل وغسل الجمعة آكد الأغسال المسنونة وخرج بحاضريها وهو وخرج بحاضريها وهو من زيادة في الأخيرتين من لم يرد حضورها فلا يسن له الغسل بخلاف غسل العيد لا يختص بحاضريها كما سيأتي. So for Eid, it's recommended for the day, right? Not recommended for the person who's attending. لأنه يراد للزينة وكلهم من أهلها. وغسل الثلاثة المذكورة لقطع الرائحة الكريهة عن الجماعة فاختص بحاضريها. And then it says وغسل عيد. Inshallah, we'll come back to this. Inshallah. So we'll start next week with the sunnah ghusls of in Lubab, and then we'll come back inshallah ta'ala. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.